there's nothing worse than being stuck in a place that you don't know, like driving directions wise, and your technology just chooses not to find a satellite. So I'm sitting here in a parking lot waiting for this thing to finally kick in, but it's not looking good right now. So it did this the other day when I was in DC, and I got lost in Maryland somewhere. Come on.
Johnny Booth was a handsome devil, got up in his rings and fancy silks, had him a temper but kept it level, everybody called him Wilkes. Why did you do it, Johnny? Nobody agrees. You who had everything.
So I'm on my way to the grave of John Wilkes Booth, and I got here, drove like almost an hour and a half, 2 hours to get here, and the place is closed because the storms apparently like knocked down a bunch of trees and everything. And so some lady, as I pulled up to the gate, she saw me and she saw my look of distress, and I begged her to let me come in. So I am here, marching up here to the grave of John Wilkes Booth, and they are kind of cleaning up here. But they told me that I'm only allowed to go to the grave of Booth. That is it. So I'm going to go by their restrictions and get in and get out real fast. All right. Well, we finally arrived at the gravesite of John Wilkes Booth, and he's somewhere over in this area. This is the Booth family plot. Some of his siblings are buried here. His father's buried here, and the most famous sibling, Edwin Booth, is not actually buried here. He's buried somewhere up north somewhere. But he's probably the one that most people would know in history because he was such a fantastic actor. Like they even have like some sort of like acting award in his honor in New York. And but he probably would have been the one that would have been the most famous in our history had John Wilkes Booth not stolen his thunder and assassinated President Lincoln. But John Wilkes Booth is buried somewhere in this plot. We're not exactly sure where. The family asked the real location not to be revealed. But I think it's very interesting that this little marker here has Lincoln pennies on it, and I don't know why. I don't know whether it's like a protest against what Booth did to mock him, or whether it's some sort of like commemoration to acknowledge, that he did something good, Because honestly, there are some people out there even to this day that still think that what he did was a heroic thing, which is exactly what Booth would have wanted people to think of him. So anyway, he's somewhere over here. Now, of course, you have to throw a conspiracy theory into this whole thing, because some people will say that John Wilkes Booth is not actually here, and that he ended up escaping from Garrett's farm, or was helped to escape from Garrett's farm. He wasn't actually killed. But some people say that he lived to the ripe old age somewhere, and there was an effort to try to exhume the body here to try to prove that it was John Wilkes Booth. But either the cemetery here or the Booth family, the descendants of the Booth family, would not allow the exhumation to take place. So as a history teacher, I am fairly certain that John Wilkes Booth, number one, assassinated President Lincoln, and number two, I think he's rotting right here. So, conspiracy theorists love to come up with new and interesting things, but I really think they're kind of out of control on this one. So, well, I got to get out of here because they are giving me the stink eye up in here, right over there, as a matter of fact. But I promise this will be the only site that I visited here in the cemetery, and I guess I got to get out of here so they can continue cleaning up from the storm that was here on Friday. So, on to the next cemetery, wherever that may be.
There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound?
Okay, so we are in Congressional Cemetery here in Washington, D.C., and this is another cemetery that has the remains of one of the Lincoln conspirators. Right here, somewhere in an unmarked grave, is David Harold, and he was the guy that accompanied Lewis Payne to assassinate William Seward. And once, he was kind of like waiting outside, and he kind of heard all the commotion going on inside the Seward house. Apparently Fanny Seward was screaming bloody murder. And so Harold got spooked by it and ran off into the night. And he ended up meeting John Wilkes Booth outside Washington, D.C. And they went on the run for 12 days and were eventually cornered at Garrett's farm in a tobacco barn. Now, once they were surrounded, of course, Harold was like, you know what, forget this, I'm out of here. And so he ran out and surrendered to the authorities. Meanwhile, John Wilkes Booth, you know, decided not to and ended up getting shot and died because of it. But Harold, he was put on trial for in the conspiracy plot against Lincoln and others that night. And he met his fate in July of 1865 at the end of a noose. So he ended up getting buried somewhere around here. The Harold family demanded that they not tell the exact location, but we know that his family's all around here, and we know that he's somewhere here. It's just they don't have a marked plot for him. So we're going to continue on to another location. Apparently there's somebody else here buried that's connected in some way to the assassination. Not so much the conspiracy, but the assassination. So we're going to go find him. And there's a lot of other people buried here too, so we'll probably visit them too. So after a lot of searching, we have come to another victim of the Lincoln assassination, but one that actually lived. And this is the gravesite of Emmerich Hansel, and he was one of the ones that was injured whenever Seward was being attacked. So apparently it's a pretty significant event in the guy's life because he's got it on his gravestone. So I guess that's how he wanted to be remembered. Or at least the family wanted it to be remembered that way. Not sure which.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to...
So yeah, I decided that from Congressional Cemetery, I thought, yeah, I'll just walk over to Mount Olivet, which is where Mary Surratt is buried. And yeah, it's hot. I walked in the blazing heat through some not so nice neighborhoods in order to get here. And I got into the little visitors area, all sweaty, almost collapsing from dehydration and heat exhaustion. And they proceeded to tell me that they can't tell me where Mary Surratt is buried because the family called right after the conspirator came out and said, please do not reveal the location of our ancestor to anybody anymore. And so I'm kind of wandering aimlessly around the cemetery because I'm not giving up. I'm finding this thing. So Mary, wherever you are, give up the secret, honestly, because I'm in no mood. So after a lot of searching and a little bit of crying, I finally found the grave of Mrs. Surratt. That is Mary Surratt right there, and yeah, so you can see that there's a lot of damage here from the trees being blown down. So I'm actually kind of surprised that the whole place is open, but anyway, Mary Surratt was one of the Lincoln conspirators. She was accused of helping in the conspiracy, and there's been a lot of doubt about her exact role in it. Some people say that she was sort of a victim of kind of hysteria and wanting to accuse people since John Wilkes Booth was already dead, but wanting to seek vengeance upon the South. And so some people say that Mary Surratt was part of that whole thing, but I really don't know the exact answers. I think she probably knew a little bit more than what some people say, but I don't know whether... I think she knew more about the plot to maybe kidnap President Lincoln rather than the assassination plot, but you know, that's just my own opinion. So anyway, that's where she's resting there, and yeah.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love, love's going to leave me.
Well, our hunt for the Lincoln conspirators has taken us to Virginia and Maryland, and now we're all the way down in Florida. And as you can see at Disney World, right there. Megan! And you might be wondering, like, he's looking for Megan. Disney had nothing to do with the conspiracy to assassinate Lincoln. But one of the conspirators, Lewis Payne, is buried just about 30 miles away from here. So I'm going to go hunt him down in just a few minutes, but before that I think I'm going to try to hit Space Mountain. And hopefully the line's not too long, but if it is, I got an annual pass, so I can just come back. So. Well, here we are in Geneva Cemetery, out in the middle of nowhere in Florida. Hopefully there's no snakes and alligators up in here. So, but we're on the hunt for Lewis Powell, or Lewis Payne as he is also known, and he is apparently in the cemetery somewhere, and we're going to try to find him. I'd ask for his help, but I don't think he's going to answer me at this point. So, it's a small cemetery, so it should be pretty easy to find him. Well, here is the gravesite of Lewis Powell, or Lewis Payne, whatever you want to call him. And it's funny that they list all of the things that he did during the Civil War, but they don't really mention anything about him attempting to assassinate William Stewart, which, you know, you would never expect to on a gravesite. But anyway, you can see that people, you know, still bring little things, you know, flags and such things. But his mama, Carolyn Powell, is like right behind him there. So, but yeah, this is where his head is anyway. Now, a lot of people wonder, like, how the heck Lewis Powell ended up here in Geneva, Florida. Well, the answer to that was, you know, after his execution, his body was, you know, basically put in the ground, like right next to where the execution took place. Well, in later years, they kept on digging up the graves and like moving them from place to place to place. And at some point, somehow or another, Payne's head got separated from the rest of them. I don't know this whole story, but anyway, his skull ended up in the Smithsonian, kind of in their archives. And it wasn't until the 1990s that there was a researcher that was going through cataloging Native American remains. This researcher, you know, came upon Lewis Payne's skull as, like, you know, cataloged, and, you know, it's just kind of hiding out. So anyway, after his head was found, there were efforts made to, you know, bring his head here to the Geneva Cemetery to be right next to his mama. So I don't know where the rest of his body is. I have no clue. I guess that's the next mission, is to try to find where the rest of him is, but I don't think anybody really knows. I could be wrong, but you'd think they would bring the rest of them here if his head's here.